Hi friends, my name is Jenny and welcome back to another video. So in all honesty, this video is really just to test out my new phone's camera, as I got a iPhone SE as an early birthday present. Well, I guess half of it I paid for, but my parents paid for the other half. And I wanted to test out the camera quality because that was definitely something that my old iPhone 7 was really lacking in. Particularly it had some like cracks in the screen and I think also in the back camera that meant that there was like dust and stuff, so the quality was just not the best. But the quality of the camera already seems to be like really good, so that's the actual reason why I'm filming this vlog. But nevertheless, I figured it would be a fun time to vlog given that it is mid-month book bash. I am currently reading 3 books and that's my goal for mid-month book bash, is to finish all 3 of the books I'm reading, as well as kind of get a fair amount of the way through the next book I'm hoping to start. The one I'm the furthest along in and will probably actually finish today if I have the time, I have like 60 or 70 pages left, is Olga Dies Dreaming. I actually have the cover right here. Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez. I got this for my December book of the month pick. So this is a contemporary literary fiction novel about 2 siblings who are Puerto Rican, but they've both lived in Brooklyn their whole lives, and their parents were both revolutionaries in the 70s, and their mom actually left them when they were both kind of in their early teens, like late tween years, I think. And so we were both learning about kind of that history, but then also a 2017 timeline that has to do with Hurricane Maria that has just hit Puerto Rico, where I am in the book. It's a nice mixture of like a kind of more rompy, fun book, while it's like kind of gotten heavier and heavier as we move through the book and as our characters kind of grow as people. I'll be curious how the book kind of completes the execution of its discussion of their mother, as I personally have very strong feelings that their mother should like not be redeemed as a character. Both of them I think feel that way, but sometimes they like toe the line being like, I should be living in my mother's honor, and I'm like, no you shouldn't. Like, you should, if you feel angry about your mother, like feel angry about your mother and not like feel like you have to redeem her leaving you. Like, that was not your fault. Which I think the way that I feel is how the book is going to conclude, but if it does not conclude that way, I definitely will be frustrated. And then the other 2 books I'm reading are both on my Kindle, one of which is Why We Swim by Bonnie Choi. This is a nonfiction book about swimming and why we do it. That's primarily like history, science of like why swimming is good for us and where did humans first kind of incorporate swimming into their exercise routine, which I'm enjoying. I do love to swim. I'm definitely not as like intense of an avid swimmer as the people that are kind of highlighted in this book, but I do enjoy swimming from time to time. It's one of my most preferred forms of exercise, and there've been a lot of interesting kind of science tidbits about why swimming is such a popular sport and why it's particularly, you know, so popular among older people. And so yeah, it's been really interesting so far. Definitely, I think, different than I really expected it to be. I'm not really sure what I anticipated, but it's very, I don't know, science poppy nonfiction, which is not usually the type of nonfiction I read, I think, and I thought it was gonna be more like genre bending, when really it is pretty much like answering the question of why we swim, but still in an interesting and like engaging way. And she throws in some like memoir pieces there too, because Bonnie Choi herself is an avid swimmer, and I'm like halfway through this one, so this is probably the last one that I'll finish, but I am still hoping to finish it. And I'm also listening to the audiobook, which is fine. I wouldn't like go out of your way to listen to it. And then the other one I'm reading right now is Many Stories by Morgan Thomas, and this one, the first like 2 stories I really hated. They didn't make any sense. They were really confusing, and so I was like, oh god, this collection is not gonna make any sense. And then as we got further into the collection, the stories began to have more of a kind of traditional narrative arc, and so I've enjoyed the like kind of middle stories so far more than those first 2 or 3 stories. And I only have 3 stories left, and one of them is the title story, Manywhere, which a lot of the other early reviews, this one's an arc, it doesn't come out till January 24th, but a lot of the other early reviews, Manywhere is like a favorite story among people. So I'm excited about this one as well, and hopefully we'll finish up those last 3 stories the next day or 2. And then the book that I want to start next after I finish all 3 of these books is Look in the Shadows by Lynn Florling, as this was one of the books that I brought home, and I'm here for another like 11 or 12 days, and I'd love to finish this book before I go back because I don't want to take it with me. Plan is to hopefully get a fair amount of progress in this book as well over the course of this vlog, so we'll see about that. But then I also wanted to show you some other fun things, like my book of the month box also came today with my new phone, and I bought 2 books yesterday because one of my favorite new and used bookstores here in Atlanta was having their big Christmas sale, and yesterday was the last day of the sale. 40% off new books, 50% off used books. So I did get 2 new books that I'm really excited for, and I started reading both of them while I was in the bookstore. And the first one is Objects of Desire by Claire Stanovich. This is a short story collection that I had on my radar. It was definitely one that was pretty highly anticipated, but then I didn't get an arc of it, so I kind of lowered it down on my priority list, but it was blurbed on the back by Brandon Taylor, saying that this is one of the best story collections he's read in a long time. The stories are subtle and sophisticated, written with the sensitive lucidity and warmth, which sounds great. Exactly the type of feelings I like to have in a short story collection. And then the blurb also says that these are fresh, powerful stories that are about thrilling desire and melancholic yearning that animate women's lives from the brink of adulthood to the labyrinth path between 20 and 30 to middle age, when certain possibilities quietly elapse. That's a time frame in a person's life that I also am interested in, given that I am rapidly approaching the midpoint of my 20s. And so, yeah, I'm really excited about this collection. It's a short collection too, so hopefully we'll get to this sooner rather than later. And then the other one that I'm super excited about is Oh Beautiful by Jung Yun. And I heard someone talk about this very recently, and I don't remember who it was, but they were absolutely raving about it. And I also just think this sounds like the absolute perfect book for me. So I never read Shelter, which is Jung Young's other book. She's a American writer who traces her heritage to South Korea, but she grew up in Fargo, North Dakota, which is also where this book takes place, in North Dakota. And it sounds kind of autobiographical in some ways. It's about a young woman who's a former model who is now a freelance writer, and she gets assigned to write about the back-end oil boom in North Dakota. So similar to Yellowbird, which I read back in December, you know, about the oil boom in North Dakota. And the blurb says that she experiences a profound sense of alienation and grief. She rages at the unrelenting male gaze. The locals who still see her as a foreigner, and the memories of her family's estrangement after her mother decided to escape her unhappy marriage, leaving Eleanor and her sister behind. The longer she pursues this potentially career-altering assignment, the more her past intertwines with the story she's trying to tell. And it's about one woman's attempts to reconcile her anger with her love of a beautiful but troubled land, which, like, talking about male violence in the context of oil booms is all I like to read about in fiction. Some of my favorite books grapple with those topics, and so I am super excited about this one and want to get to it maybe even like next month as like a birthday read, because I just think it's gonna be really, really good. But then I've also gotten yet another book in my Book of the Month box, so I'm gonna open this up and show you what it is that I got. Also, does anyone else find it kind of funny that a bunch of British and European booktubers have been getting Book of the Month sponsorships? I just find it interesting because, like, they can't even get Book of the Month. Like, it doesn't ship internationally. It's only a US product. But the power of US capitalism, I guess. And also, I guess their viewership is probably, the majority of it is based in the US, so it's still a product available for their viewers. It's just odd to me. But anyways, the book that I got in my January box was Fiona and Jane by Jean Chen Ho. I think is how you say her name, but honestly I'm not sure, who is a doctoral candidate in creative writing and literature at the University of Southern California, and she was born in Taiwan, which is interesting. Taiwan's a place that I'm very fascinated by. I read Two Trees Make a Forest, which was one of my favorite books of the year, so I'll put a link to that up where I talk about my favorite books. But this is about best friends since second grade, Fiona, Lynn, and Jane Chen, who are living in Los Angeles, and I believe, yes, it's stories told in alternating voices. Jean Chen Ho's debut collection peels back the layers of female friendship, the intensity, resentment, and boundless love to probe the beating hearts of young women coming to terms with themselves and each other in light of the insecurities and shame that hold them back. And I believe it follows them over the course of like several decades, and perhaps like some event happens that kind of ruptures the friendship, but we kind of continue to learn about that over the course of this like novel and story. So I'm really excited about this one. I love short stories. Those are kind of my preliminary updates. This intro clip has already been super long. Oh, one other thing. I just wanted to show you this because it's super cute. Since I don't think I've vlogged since Christmas, I just have two little presents that I want to show you that my friends got me because they're so beautiful / cute. So one of my best friends actually made this for me. She does embroidery and she did this, and it's just absolutely stunning. Can't wait to, I have a whole like vision for how this is going to be the centerpiece, or one of the centerpieces of a whole like wall of like little art pieces. So I'm excited to kind of begin working on that. And then the other thing I got from another one of my best friends from undergrad was a Benji tote bag. Isn't he so cute? Which, speaking of, I've been doing Adrian's Move 30-day yoga challenge, and she is like whipping us all into shape. She was like, we're gonna do core every single day. We're gonna be in a downward dog for a really long time. It's a lot, but I'm enjoying it, but it's a lot. Good morning, everyone. My phone is picking up the sun like so well that it's almost like my face looks so pale. So sorry about that. It is Friday, January 7th, and the first official day of mid-month book bash. And I wanted to let you know that last night in my extension of Mid-Month Book Bash yesterday evening. I did finish Olga Dies Dreaming by Xochitl Gonzalez, and a lot of the things that I said in that intro clip I still agree with. I still have some complex feelings about the depiction of their mother in here, and I'd love to like hear other people's thoughts because I don't know, I kind of wish there had been something more, but I'm not sure what that something more would be. Whether that's more of a kind of redemption of some of the side characters who actually, you know, really were their primary caretakers, or more of a acknowledgement of the harm that their mother had caused them. Something along those lines I feel like was kind of missing from the book, and I just wish it had wrapped that up a bit more cleanly. But at the same time, you know, relationships with estranged family members are really complicated, and so maybe the way it wrapped up was good. I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've read this book, what you thought of the mother in particular. But I enjoyed it. I think the political aspects of this are also very interesting because I've read reviews that both talk about this book as like really radical, but then also reviews from more like very progressive, kind of more radically leaning people here in the US who are like, this book is like center left. So I'm also kind of intrigued about that element. I can see both sides of this because I think there's issues depicted in here that more moderate leaning political figures would not necessarily outright support, but then there's also things in here that I think are not taking the issues presented with regards to Puerto Rico far enough in terms of a more radical, like progressive lens. This book pretty much aligned mostly with what my political views are, which are pretty like socially liberal. I don't feel that I know enough about the situation in Puerto Rico to understand the best path forward, although I don't think it should be like a territory of the United States. I personally don't have enough knowledge to understand the benefits and differences between it being its own independent like country or a state within the United States, but I definitely don't think it nor the District of Columbia should be these weird little like territory things. That just doesn't seem great to me, given that both of those places are places that are majority non-white. You know, that just feels very obvious that that's why they are not states. One other thing I didn't particularly love is that sometimes it would like really just be a quick little history lesson about something, which was helpful because, as I said, I know almost nothing about Puerto Rico and its history, but at the same time, sometimes you don't want to read like little history lesson in your book. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars, would still highly recommend it though, especially if you like more political fiction, as this definitely does not shy away from a lot of important issues, particularly both in Puerto Rico, but also in New York with regards to like affordable housing, gentrification, kind of destruction of non-white communities in New York that have been there for a long time. All those things are kind of touched on this book as well. So I would recommend that one. In terms of my other books, I am still reading Manywhere and Why We Swim, but I'm hoping to finish up Manywhere this morning. I think I only have less than an hour left on my Kindle, which I really love that feature on your Kindle that it tells you how long it will take you to finish a book. I just find that so helpful. It's only 2 stories, so I'm gonna quickly finish those ones now this morning. Hi everyone, it is still Friday, but I have changed. Well, I've really just put a sweater on and put earrings in and put my hair up. But my mom and I are about to go run our errands, but I wanted to let you know that I finished both Manywhere and Why We Swim this morning, so I figured I would chat to you about both of them briefly now. So both of these books I actually gave 4 stars to, and I would recommend to the appropriate audience. For Manywhere, as I said, I think in the first clip, I really didn't like the first 2 stories, and I wish they'd been kind of put somewhere in the middle of the collection, as I think I don't know, they just didn't quite work as well. But now I'd be curious too to like go back to them, because maybe having kind of gotten to the flow better of Morgan Thomas's work, those first 2 stories would have worked better for me. I don't know, but I don't really like the first 2, but then the rest of them were quite a success for me, and several of them I really enjoyed. I think the collection in general really grapples with like queerness and gender identity, particularly like trans identities, and also history in a really interesting way. And then a lot of themes too of like pregnancy and motherhood, always kind of a theme that I'm drawn to. So I really liked that collection for this reason, and I would recommend it to people that like short stories, particularly stories that are, I want to say, kind of less narrative driven, or kind of exploratory in terms of like characters and themes than like necessarily a plot driven story. Not speculative, but almost speculative. Some elements of kind of non-linearity and like non-traditional storytelling, I would say, but really interesting collection. Then Why We Swim I also enjoyed. I think because I am a swimmer myself, I liked it more, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend the book to people who don't swim because I don't think you'd get a whole lot out of it. But I really liked the way that it kind of explored and explained some of the more psychological and physiological impacts and positive benefits of swimming that I've experienced but never really thought about why I like swimming for those reasons. I also liked how kind of, you know, inspiring it was in terms of the narratives that it shows of more kind of intense swimmers as opposed to just kind of more casual swimmers such as myself. And then I also really liked the final section, which was called Flow, and that one was a lot more memory in nature and really focused on like Bonnie Choi and her love of swimming and how that kind of manifests and why it means so much to her. And that one also incorporated a lot more kind of like literature and like art and media explorations of swimming and why we're kind of drawn to it, which I thought was really cool. If you like nonfiction, that's kind of a mixture of all of these different things that I've talked about. I feel like it's a pretty good version of that, but I haven't started Look in the Shadows yet, but I'm hoping potentially that I could finish this over mid-month book back. So that's gonna be my stretch goal. But I will also be okay if I don't end up finishing this, because in all honesty, I don't really know how much I'm doing this weekend, and so I feel like I could finish this if I put my mind to it. Morrison has woken up. Can you see him? There he is. What a cutie.
This is where our magic comes from.
Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday, the 8th of January, and I have been up for quite a while. It's probably actually almost noon now, but I was just checking in with you now, and I wanted to let you know two things. One, that we watched Encanto last night, which was really cute. Definitely if you like Disney movies, I would recommend it. Had some fun songs and good like coming to terms with familiar expectations and redefining those expectations, and it was really good and cute. Would recommend. But I also have read quite a bit of Look in the Shadows. I am on page 130, and I started this like yesterday afternoon. It's definitely a quick read. I definitely think I'll be able to get through it by the end of mid-month book bash, which is exciting, and I am enjoying this one quite a bit. I think it definitely is very like classic fantasy. It feels very nostalgic in a lot of ways, which is interesting because I didn't read a ton of a big fantasy or like fantasy all that much when I was a kid. I mean, I read Harry Potter and Peter and the Starcatchers and Redwall, but I mean, and I've read Lord of the Rings, but I've not like, this was not like my bread and butter when I was a kid, unlike a lot of, I think, other people that really like fantasy. But I don't know, it just feels very classic in a way that I think is kind of cozy and fun. I definitely like the two characters, and I'm intrigued about the premise and what's happening. That's one thing that I always kind of struggle with fantasy, is that I'm so curious about what is going on that sometimes I'm like racing through the book just purely to understand what is happening, as opposed to like being along for the ride, which I think is kind of the point. And I can do that with literary fiction. It's just for whatever reason with fantasy, I get like really caught up in like understanding the entire complexities of the world, except for Lord of the Rings. That one, and maybe that's because I already knew the story, but when I read that, I was just along for the ride, which you kind of have to be because it's 1,000 pages. But anyway, this one is fun. It's about our two main characters, Alec and I think it's Sergel, if I remember from when Chris Bookcase Cauldron has talked about this book. And they are both spies, and we haven't actually like met whoever they work for. Alec has just kind of been brought on by Sergel after they both were imprisoned, and then Sergel like frees both of them at the very beginning of the book, and now they're kind of on an adventure, and there's definitely some like foul play going on that they are trying to both investigate and stop. So yeah, I'm very interested. It's definitely very fast-paced, but also like pretty classic fantasy of like, you know, wizards and magic and stuff. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sunday. I haven't checked in with you yet today, but I just got back from church with my mom, and also going to get some cream cheese because we are making bagels. This is the dough resting period. But I figured I would also just kind of update you. I did read quite a bit of Look in the Shadows yesterday. I'm on page 286, and I determined that the exact number of pages I read, because I track the number of pages I read each day for my reading log in my bullet journal, and the exact number of pages I read yesterday I would have to read today to finish this book, which it is already 12:45, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to accomplish that. But I also think this like last third-ish is gonna pick up the pace quite a bit than some of like the earlier parts of the book, so we will see if I'm able to finish this. But yeah, in the meantime, I'm making these bagels. We are on step 5 or 6, I think, out of 10. So we have about an hour left of the bagel making process, I would assume. I'm just planning on like reading and chilling. It's like kind of a dreary day outside and it's pretty chilly and I think it's about to start raining soon. So yeah, perfect day to like curl up with my book, maybe a cup of tea and read. Hi friends, it's close to 7 p.m. on Sunday evening. I wanted to let you know that after making my bagels, I basically just sat down for several hours and finished this book, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I gave it 4.5 stars, would highly recommend. It was super fun, just like great characters, really fun hijinks and plotting, and I feel like it had pretty good pacing and I just really enjoyed it. I had a grand old time, definitely more like kind of classic, nostalgic fantasy that you can just kind of get lost in the world, and there's not a whole lot of like broader themes that you're thinking about, but just kind of a fun story that you like get lost in, which is not something I do like super often in the types of books that I read. So I think I really enjoyed this kind of breath of fresh air for that reason, and definitely plan on continuing with the series. From what I've heard from Chris at Chris's Bookish Cauldron, who like really loves this book, there's like kind of duologies, like it's 7 books in total, but there's duologies. Like there's a second one after this one that kind of completes a story arc, and then there's a standalone, and then I think like 2 other duologies or something. And so I definitely hope to get to the second one, which will kind of complete out this storyline at some point, like sooner rather than later, perhaps like during the summer or something. There's definitely a couple like arcs that I want to prioritize, but after that, I might honestly just buy a copy because it's on Thrift Books for like $3. So yeah, I've thoroughly enjoyed this, really thought it was just super fun, and I don't know what else to say, but definitely if you're like a fantasy fan, or even if you just kind of dabble in fantasy like I do, I feel like this was really surprisingly good. So definitely would recommend that one. So even though mid-month book bash continues on through tomorrow and I am starting 2 new books this evening, possibly, I don't think I'm going to continue vlogging. So this will be the end of this vlog. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any thoughts on any of the books that I talked about or any of the other things, oh, I will also put a link to the bagel recipe that I made down in the description box below. I actually got it from Laurel at insert book pun here, but she doesn't make videos anymore, which is really sad. But she was the one that like turned me on to this bagel recipe, and it's really good and honestly not that hard. So I am going to resolve to make bagels more frequently because they're so delicious. I absolutely love bagels, and they're honestly really not that hard to make. If you are new to my channel, I'd love to have you stick around and subscribe. I hope you're having a great rest of your day whenever you watch this, and I'll talk to you next time.